Hey, today I'm painting my dog of the day on the beach in Miami, which is where I took this photograph of this little Papillon, which, in case you don't know, it means butterfly in French. I act like I knew that. I didn't know that until I just looked it up. I'm not all that knowledgeable on full-blooded dogs because I kind of specialize in mutts for myself, the dogs that I own, or I should say the dogs that own me. So what I'm doing here is I have sketched the dog out on this little canvas, first in pastel because it's really easy to keep reworking and to wipe it off, and measure the photograph that I'm working from and go back and forth until I get it pretty much like I want it, and I feel pretty confident that I have here. I've measured the distance between the eyes, how far that is compared to the overall, the face, the distance between the ears. There's a lot of different ways that you can measure to make sure you get the proportions right. I usually start with the whole body from the furthest tip of the ear to the tail and decide what size I'm going to put it on the canvas, what size of canvas and where exactly I want it on the canvas. And then I start measuring out my area and the dog. And I usually work from a photograph just on my iPad. So then I can enlarge it and make it smaller and go back and forth until I get the measurements just right. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting in the darkest darks in the areas that show up on the photograph as the very, not black, but close to it. So this around this dog's face is a really dark kind of burnt sienna or rust, and I don't want to cover the eyes up totally, but I want to cover the canvas pretty good in that area. Okay, and so I'm putting the dog on the beach, so this is the going to be the sand and then the water out here. So I'm just putting this base coat on the whole thing, and then I'm going to come back over and put the majority of the paint on with my palette knife. Shadow in the sand, and the dog is mainly white with some black here and some deep rust color up on its head. And this is his tail back here. So this was just a quick photo I took of this dog on Miami Beach, and it was a very bright sunshiny day, and so the sun is causing some dark shadows in the sand as well as some good highlights on the dog and in the sand. Okay, I'm making the ocean go all the way to the top of the painting, and my base coat on the staining on the canvas, I did an acrylic, and then I used a black acrylic to fill in the dog outline in the drawing of the dog. So my ocean is dripping down here a little bit, but that's okay. So what I want to do is I just want to get this coat of blue on the ocean, And I'm going to use this same blue, grade down just a little bit to cover in the area on the dog that is white, because the white fur has a lot of blue shadows and a lot of other colors in it besides just white. Looks kind of like a mess right now, but that's the stage that paintings frequently go through. It's the ugly stage. It gets better. All right, that's it for now. So this hasn't dried at all. It's just been a few minutes since I did it, but I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna lay in some colors with my palette knife here. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting in some dark shadows in the sand. And I've got the sand already kind of in that dark brown umber, a little burnt sienna, and some ultramarine. But now I've got more blue, more ultramarine, and I'm just kind of putting in a few darker spots just under the dog there. And then I'm going to go behind and in front of the dog on the sand. Add a little color. I would say this is the mid-tone, mid to dark tone of the sand. The surf down here where the water's hitting the sand. I'm saving the dog fur for last because it will come out over all of this in the painting. And I'm now taking a little more titanium white, mixing it with ochre, burnt sienna, a little bit of that umber, because like I said, it's a bright sunshiny day, so I don't want that sand to remain dark. I want to lighten it up a little bit. I'm adding a little more of a bright yellow, a little orange. I did tint the whole canvas a dark, kind of darkish red, orange, more red I guess, more kind of pinky. And it's showing through a little bit, but not much. Okay, so I can always go back in and play with this with a brush and spots and add more darkness or light. And the next area I'm going to work on just quickly is the ocean. I've got ultramarine and a little bit of a little deep lavender violet color mixed in with the ultramarine, and I'm taking that at the back. And because this is a loose kind of impressionistic painting, I'm not worrying about actually making the waves, but when you look at the ocean, the very top closest to the horizon is going to be the lightest in color. The darkest in color, and then of course the lighter parts are closer to the shore with the waves. And I am not getting so specific as to draw in any waves. I'm just using this knife. Actually, you can call this a palette knife or a painting knife. I've heard both names. And there's all different sizes of knives. This is probably the way I would say I always mix my paint on my palette, at least some, before I put it on a painting. And I use, this would probably be my favorite size knife to do that with. And it's got a number, but it's worn off. It's pretty small. This is the other size that I use a lot. So this one, this canvas is pretty little to be doing knife work with. So I am using my smallest knife. Okay, so I've kind of, got down the lines here, and I've got paint on the dog, but that's all going to be fixed. And I will use a brush to do the eyes and some of the small detail work, the nose, some of the hairs around on the face especially. So that's all for now. I need to let it set just a bit before I start messing with the fur. Now I have most of the background, the ocean and the sand, the shoreline, and under the dog. Pretty much the values that I want it, the colors, the shades that I want it to be. And I have blocked in colors with a brush on the dog. The darkest darks at his ears, next to where his ear starts at the bottom, and the black fur on the side in the back of the dog. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a color that is a little bit on the bright side. It's a burnt sienna. I mixed it with a little bit of alizarin and maybe a little yellow ochre. And I'm going to put it on his ears. This dog has some very long, wispy strands of hair. I'm not going to worry too much about how it looks in the beginning, because I can straighten it up and work on it with a brush a little bit and with a knife more after I get this on. So I don't want to cover up the darkest dark there. The ears almost seem to be the most prominent thing on this dog. His ears look like they could just, he could fly away with these little ears. And then on his face, there's more of this color. It's a little tricky to use the knife to do this. So again, I'll be using a brush to kind of get it more precisely where I want it. I have kind of lost his eye over here, but I'll get it back. His snout and up on his forehead is white. That's where I have it a really dark gray right now, and I will come in with some different shades of a gray blue and more white. It's almost hard to mess this up because, like I said, his hair is just very long and wispy. So I'm going to go with that for now. I can come back in with more of this color. One more, a little bit above this eye. And now I'm going to grab some of the darkest dark and make sure that I haven't lost this area. So this is most paintings go through an ugly phase, a phase where you look at it and you think, what's gonna happen? What's she doing there? But you just have to keep going, because it almost always works out. Not always, almost always. All right, so I want to keep some of the grayed down white, especially under the chin, under his little, I keep saying he, I don't know if it's a he or a her, so I'll try to use her some. We don't know if she is a boy or a girl, but I know she's really pretty, whichever she is. All right, so her little foot, none of her feet really show. It's just a little protrusion there, and you know there's a foot there somewhere. Same thing at the back. There isn't a clear foot in the photo that I'm working from because it's all kind of just like covered with hair. So again, there's white fur down here. And even though this isn't a commission, it's a photograph that I took on the beach, and I still just want to try to keep it as close as I can to this photograph because it gives me something to work from, and that's always kind of makes a painting look more cohesive when you can follow some kind of pattern of color and shapes. So this is very black. I have ivory black mixed with ultramarine blue, because whenever there's black on an animal, it looks too flat just to have it be solid black. Sometimes you may see highlights of brown or maybe even a kind of a deep burgundy or wine color. But this little dog, it seemed to me like I can use the ultramarine blue to add to the navy. And we will be going with some white up here because it's white more on most of the back. There's a lot of white fur. Don't want to lose the nose or the eyes. Now I'm going to take still a grayed white. It's more gray than white probably. And I'm going to put a little bit of that. Near the bottom. I like the texture that a palette knife adds to a painting. I'm saving the whitest white for the top of the back of the body and the neck, and then on her face. It will be not totally white, but whiter than this. Sometimes when you're using a palette knife, you just have to go for it. You just got to get it in there, and you got to hope for the best occasionally. And if it's not looking like you want, you can scrape it off. Try again. But there were some hairs that really come out kind of a long ways here, so that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm gonna try to add a little more light color on the dog's face with this little knife. Okay, not bad. I got out a line where I didn't want to go just a bit, so I may be covering that up. So I have I have one more kind of let's see, here it is. It's got a little rubber end to it. It's pointed. I use it to scrape in on some canvas where I want to remove wet paint. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure there's a name for it. But I'll see if I can do this. Okay. That's pretty much the way the nose and the mouth is. There's the little tongue. I'm gonna have to go back in and add some black outline with a small brush and make that mouth and eyes pop, because they did get a little bit lost with all of this knife work. And I'll probably add some highlights of yellow to some of the white hair to make it look like sun shining on her or him. We don't know. So using a knife or a little tool like this, instead of a brush, not only does it add interesting texture, but it gives the painting just a looser feel because you don't have as much control over it. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a little challenging because you lose some of the details you need, which is why I will go back in with a small brush and fill in some details. So now I'm adding a little more of a golden yellow ochre color to some of these hairs at the tip of the ears. And again, I'll go back in, maybe do a little cleanup work here. With a brush. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop and take a look. So here's a little cleanup work. I'm going to just move this paint around a little bit. It's still very wet. I just added it. And a bunch of little wispy hairs. And then what? I don't know. And then something I was gonna say. And then, and then I'm just going to darken some of the areas that need to be darker. Because those ears are so big, they cast a pretty big shadow. So now I'm going to go in with a small brush and make a few lines and shadows. There's always some kind of arch above an animal's eye, whether it's darker or lighter hair. And then almost always there's going to be a little under eye shadow. So this little dog's got some dark that comes out this direction. Down here it's a little bit darker because it's under his face, casting a shadow from the sunshine. Okay, I'm not through with those ears yet. It's okay that some of the orangey color got on this. I'm just going to try to, take a little bit of it out. Okay. And usually below a dog's nose, if the hair is white, it's going to be a little darker, maybe a little on the gray side, right under here. And then with even a darker shade of some black, I'm going to outline the mouth. This little line here goes back a little. And then it cuts up under the tongue, of course. This is little gums. Or a lip. I think it's a lip. I call my dogs lips. Okay, so because the dog is a distance away, I'm not going to go too crazy on detail in his mouth. I'm going to put a little darker shade of pink at the back of the mouth because the mouth is darker at the back, and then the light hits the tongue near the front. It's kind of little there, but the dog's little, right? So now I'm going to pull out my tiniest brush, and I'm going to attempt to work in a little bit of color in the dog's eyes. You're not going to be able to see much color because of how far away the dog is, but I don't want the whole thing to just be totally dark. And a little, even when a dog has dark brown eyes, there's some kind of maybe a sienna or even a little yellow ochre highlight here or there, golden touch in the eye. But in this faraway photograph, can't really tell colors. But I know the dog has brown eyes. They're not blue. Dogs with blue eyes are very fun to paint. And cat eyes, oh my gosh, there's just so many different colors of cat eyes. They can be such a bright, beautiful gold, green, that bluish, almost turquoisey look. I haven't painted as many cats as I have dogs because I've always had so many dogs. But cat eyes are definitely fun. Okay, not quite finished. I'm gonna stand back and look at this for a few minutes. I believe I've gone as far as I can with the palette knife, with this little Papillon. So what I'm doing now is I'm using a small brush and I'm going to bring back in some of the shadows, the dark spots and the highlights that I might have lost just a little bit when I was using the palette knife. I like the effect that the palette knife has with her long fur, but it's a little difficult to continue to work around, especially her face with a knife. So I'm just gonna dab around here a little bit. When you're painting a dog's hair, or a cat, or probably any animal, but I'm just going to talk about dogs and cats. Hair grows in all different directions, so you don't want to get into a spot and just use brushwork or a knife work going one way. You want to switch it all up. Like here on her little head, it grows up, it grows out, it grows to the side, all different ways. So that's what I'm trying to do. So now I'm going to mix a little of a kind of a goldish color with that dark that I was just using and lighten it up a bit more. Oh, that's nice. I have a dog hair on the end of my brush, and then I just put a big old blob of paint up on my phone, so that stuff happens when you've got animals in the house. I don't let them in my studio a lot because I have a lot of wet paint all over the place, but I don't keep them out all the time. So hair flies around and it gets caught in wet paint. Hopefully I usually catch it and get it out before I put varnish on it, because then that would kind of keep it there. All right, getting a little bit lighter color still. This one, this time with a more goldish color for some of the lighter areas in that dark reddish brown. I'm not normally all about making little bitty individual brush strokes, so I'm gonna have to do a few because her hair really is wispy and flies out all around. So I am about to get yet a smaller brush to do some of that. Okay, so I have one of my smallest brushes, and I'm just going to go around on the ends of these little hairs, and I'm highlighting with a golden color. So the sun is coming from overhead, above the dog, so it's hitting the hairs on her long, hairy little ears, and a few places on her back, and maybe just a little bit around her neck, but then under her mouth and on her chest, it wouldn't be hitting there because the shadows caused from her head. Now if the sun were coming from the side in one of the an angle, then I would make it more hitting one direction. But this is from above only, so it's a little bit of guesswork. My photo shows some lighter areas and some lighter areas I'm making up. So, you know, you have to go with that artistic license a little bit. And now I'm going to grab just a little bit lighter still, and I probably won't use a whole lot of this. You can overdo it, the highlights, so I don't want to overdo it. It's good for that shade, I believe. Let's move on to the darkest black on her trunk back here, her back and her leg and her tail. It's a mixture of black and ultramarine blue, and this is, I'm not going to do much of this. A little. Yep, speaking of dog hair. I can only imagine the hair that would be flying around in a house where this little thing lives. Okay, so that's the black, some highlights in the black, and again I'm going in all different directions because the hair, long-haired dogs or cats, it grows all different directions. Okay, I don't think I want to do much here with this color, but now I'm going to move on to the white highlights. which we have some in there already. Her tail is mainly white. So I think the area where the sun is hitting this little dog the most is her rear end and her back. Okay, I see something I want to do a little differently here on her forehead. So a lot of times these dogs like this have markings that are very specific. Like on her forehead, I'm going to get the dark reddish orangey brown color again, and I'm going to cut in where I have some white here because it goes thinner just between her eyes, maybe a little above her eyes. So I'm going to change that up a little. And this is just a little bit here. And her nose. Even if you can't see it in your reference photo, you know, a little black nose, even though it's a very black nose, it's going to have some highlights here. Light blue gray. So here's what I want to do. I want to go in right about okay. And another area I want to take down just a bit is her little snout. Not much. Just a little there. It seemed like that was just a little too fat of a nose. Okay, that does it. I'm not going to attempt to do anything like show teeth because this is too far away, and it would not, they don't show up unless I really blow up the photograph, so I'm not going to do anything else there. I might take just a little white to make her mouth pop more. Just over here. And that's it. And then I put the little light in her eyes. Don't want it to be too pronounced. You don't want it to scream white of the eye, just a little. And I've actually grayed the white down just a bit. Okay, looking to see if I want any more highlights anywhere. Yes, over here, her chest. It's gonna come out just about even with the hairs from her head. So I'm gonna bring out a little more gray and then a few highlights. Okay, I'm grabbing a little bit of the ultramarine and black on my brush here. So I can go in, dab it in just a little. And now I'm gonna make some little white hairs stand out. So if you don't put a little gray, a little blackish, bluish gray behind white hairs, white fur, then it has nothing to stand out against. It would just fade away. So the sun very well would come down and light up this area on the side of her. Here. Yep. Yep. Okay. So when you've started a painting, when you've had a good, strong start showing where the light is, the highlights and the shadows, and you've worked in your darks and you really laid in a good groundwork, then you don't need to keep messing with it. You don't need to keep fiddling with it until it's kind of just all. You can lose all of that. You can kind of make it go away by continuing to mess with it. I think I've probably ruined more paintings by overworking than not working enough. Because there's also that. Sometimes you got to keep going. You got to keep going until it looks the way you want it to. But you've also got to know when to stop. I think there's a bad Kenny Rogers song there somewhere. I'm not going there though. Aw, I shouldn't say bad. Kenny was good. He did some good stuff. Okay, again, I don't want to overdo it. I just need to add a few more little streaks of light color here. Oh, that dog has some crazy ears. She really does. And I have no clue if it's really a she or not, but that's what I keep saying, so. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm just going to go back in a little bit on the ends and cut away some of the hairs. Not much, because then it would look odd in the ocean that you'd be able to tell that I took my brush and messed around there too much. So, I think that's good. And now that I have that color on my brush, let me just add a little more highlights here. Can't really tell that I'm doing a lot, but just a little. Okay, done. If you want to see more of my animal portraits, the link to my website is in the description. If you're interested in having me paint your pet, leave a comment below or email me through my website. Thanks.